They snuck weapons into the prison. They overpowered the guards. They unlocked the doors, and Assata Shakur walked out of the front gate right into a van that was waiting for her.
Wow.
You know, I guess what we're going to do on this podcast is just talk about the things that we would normally talk about when we get together. And so I guess right now what's happening in the news is, you know, I heard about some guy that got assassinated or something like that named Charles Kirkland.
Something like that.
Is he is that the Costco guy, or is this a different?
I think it's somebody a little bit different.
Dropped the land.
He was a TikToker, a podcaster, a content creator, you might say.
Yes.
Someone who I didn't particularly like. I think I saw him the most on Twitter, which I mean, I know it's called X now. I don't spend as much time on there as I did at the time, but I would always, especially after Elon took over Twitter, you know, the algorithm shifted in a certain direction. And so I would see his tweets a lot and was frustrated by a lot of the things he said. But yeah, he would go on college campuses, and I think a lot of people mix him up with I forget the guy's name that does the change my mind sorts of things, where he goes on college campus and will make a statement and say, you know, all Black people don't deserve reparations, change my mind, or something.
Steven Crowder.
Yeah, they mix him up with him.
Yeah.
He does a similar thing. I think Steven Crowder kind of started it before him, but he'll go to college campuses and he'll allow students to come and debate him.
Right.
It didn't typically feel like a debate to me. It almost felt like, you know, he was creating content. You know, he would have college students who are not necessarily the most informed on a specific issue give their perspective, and he would give his. And ultimately what he was trying to do was create a movement of right-wing college students that ultimately was pretty successful. If you look at kind of the way Turning Point USA, the organization,
I think it was very successful.
Yeah, the way that he actually was, I think, pretty big in allowing the current president to win his re-election back in 2020.
Definitely. Well, when you're a content creator with a $90 million budget, because you're funded by billionaires,
that doesn't hurt.
You can do quite a lot of stuff.
Absolutely.
And you know, obviously, you know, to address right off of the bat, like, it's not cool to live in a world where people get assassinated, you know, for their speech. Absolutely. And honestly, it's kind of, we get into the details a little bit, but I think, you know, it's hard to say exactly what did happen. There's a suspected shooter. There's a lot of conspiracy out there right now around it. And, you know, I'm not one to always buy into conspiracies, but I'm also not one to ever trust the official narrative right out of the gate.
With the people who are running things right now.
Exactly. It's kind of crazy. And one of the things with Charlie is, and by the way, when I say that, there's a level of self-interest there too. Because as we start to put content out online, we're talking to you guys. I mean, it could be someone watching right now to try to do us in, right?
Yeah, I mean, even as many, we were talking about it yesterday, people with a very limited number of followers that we have, or I have, people are already starting to send threatening DMs. So it's real. Bro,
I got a guy that keeps sending me death threats, and like, and not like threats, but also like wishing death upon me and my wife. And dude, I will block this dude, and then he'll DM me from another account.
Are you serious?
Like on the fourth one, he literally goes, "I have an infinite sea of burner accounts. You will never escape me." I'm like, yo, people.
What's wrong with people, man?
Bro, people are crazy.
The internet is crazy
out there, dude. And you know, who knows what the motivations were for this person, the alleged shooter, who obviously came from the Trump MAGA universe, is somebody who's born out of that world. If he is the shooter, right? Who's to say what his motivations may or may not have been? Somebody could easily look at me and say that I came from the MAGA world, because I do. I come from that kind of a background and that kind of a world. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think one thing that keeps going unmissed is there's so much of this focus on trying to figure out the political identity of people who are carrying out acts of violence. And I really think it's a conversation that is stupid on its face, because it doesn't matter. Right, like the vast majority of people that hold beliefs on the right and the left aren't going out and committing acts of violence.
Absolutely,
And you know, you can point to rhetoric from Trump, very much, where, you know, I love how I keep hearing people on the right say, the Democrats keep calling us fascists. They keep calling us, you know, authoritarians, and comparing us to, you know, the Nazis, right? And that's what's creating all this political violence. literally you can find clips of Trump accusing Kamala Harris of being a communist, a fascist, a Nazi, and a lot of other people. So that rhetoric exists out there. And that doesn't mean, you know, that you're responsible for people's actions. However, there is something called stochastic terrorism. Okay. Right? Which is, you're familiar with this idea, right?
Yeah,
so
like me.
You are, you said?
No.
Oh, so stochastic terrorism is terrorism that's done as a feature of, like, you use a certain kind of speech where you don't go out and commit violence, but your speech inspires others to commit violence. I see. Yeah. And so I don't think it's enough just to call your opponent a bad name or to call them what they are. But you actually have to have, like, calls for violence, which Trump is definitely guilty of. Absolutely. You look at somebody like Charlie Kirk. If, you know, you could definitely refer to him potentially as a stochastic terrorist. And there are mass shooters who have been known to have been watchers and viewers and fans of Charlie Kirk, who regularly called for political violence, who even suggested that Joe Biden should be assassinated publicly on TV. Did you see that?
I never saw that.
Bro, he said that Joe Biden should be executed, like tried and then publicly executed.
He said that.
Charlie Kirk said this. And bro, he said children should watch it, and it should be.
I didn't see that.
He said children should watch it, and what's the word when a company supports something or endorses it? He said it should be brought to you by Coca-Cola. Sponsored by Coca-Cola. And yet, you know, anybody now who on the back end wants to talk about Kirk in any way that is critical or examines just the reality of the impact of his life. Is being pointed to as somebody that's being calling for violence. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's challenging because there's a segment of the population who I can relate to, coming from the evangelical space. And ultimately, I, for a while back, divorced myself from the political project of evangelicalism, even before I left evangelicalism. But there's been a couple conversations that I've had that kind of took me back into really like a decade ago, when some of the more incendiary political rhetoric was coming on the scene. I remember when Trump was first, you know, coming out and getting ready to be elected, and some of the things that he said now, or said back then, were what I felt to be crazy and incendiary. And people were like, I just don't like his rhetoric. I don't like the way he says things. I mean, I remember there was a rally, I don't remember where it is, but there was some people, you know, frustrated and heckling him a little bit, and he was like, get them out. If this was back in the day, you know, we'd take them out back and show them a little something with our hands, right? And so those sorts of things I found to be extremely alarming. But for some reason, some of the evangelicals that I was around found it alarming, but didn't find it disqualifying. They felt that because what he was ultimately going to do with the Supreme Court, and, you know, their prediction came to pass, the Supreme Court justices that he put forth ultimately did overturn Roe v. Wade, which is a huge deal for some people in that space.
Big deal.
But for me, I couldn't overlook his racism, his misogyny, even though I was in a space that what I came to realize was a bit more racist and misogynist and aligned with white Christian nationalism even more than I realized. And so as I think about the seeds that were planted back then and some of the justification, I think about, I'm not sure you're familiar with the guy that wrote Systematic Theology, one of the evangelical systematic theology textbooks, Wayne Grudem. Back in 2015, I remember exactly where I was at the time because I was reading his book, and he said that Donald Trump was a good candidate with flaws. And I remember I wanted to throw the book out the window because I was so frustrated with what I was coming to see was a movement of people who claimed Jesus but were so in alignment with Christian nationalism that what I felt to be my political project, I didn't have a fully formed one at the time, but what was becoming my political project was so divorced from that space that I couldn't stomach the direction I felt the country was going. And so here we are a decade later, and you have Charlie Kirk being put forward as a good Christian, an exemplary person whose people say, you know, he finished the race, he kept the faith, and he was a martyr for Christianity. Of course, plenty of people don't say these things about him, but there's a very strong segment of that evangelical community that hold him up as an exemplary Christian, even though the rhetoric that you're referring to was what to me, even as a non-Christian now, felt and feels antithetical to to Christianity. And so when you have a memorial service and there's people like a Chris Tomlin or a Carrie Joe, people whose music I didn't necessarily love, but because of the spaces I was in, I listened to and sometimes sang, them having a quote unquote revival service where people have their hands raised and they're worshiping. And there are, things, Erica Kirk said that, she forgave the shooter. And I think there's a hint of a tiny bit of beauty to that statement, but it's overshadowed by the Stephen Millers of the world and the Donald Trumps of the world getting up and saying things that are extremely hateful and almost negating exactly what Erica Kirk said.
Yeah, and bro, not even negating, but like when Stephen Miller gets up and is basically paraphrasing Goebbels, like directly, some like almost direct quotes, he's calling for violence. When Benny Johnson gets up and he literally is like, the heads of the FBI and the military, the Department of War are here, and God is telling you to use the power of the sword to strike terror into the hearts of our enemies. Not only are they negating what Erica said, but in my opinion, when Erica gets up and she doesn't denounce all of that, and she puts a human face, she puts a human face on all of that awful like fascist rhetoric by doing something that was genuinely like decent, like saying you forgive the person that did the shooting. To me, it's like, okay, that's nice, but you're also literally, by doing that, making this fascist rhetoric look and appear softer.
Absolutely.
And I think of that what's his name, the poet Oliver Wilde, an essayist Oliver Wilde. I think it's him who said that the worst slave owners were those that were kind to their slaves.
I've heard that.
Right, because in a sense, they softened and whitewashed and gave a human face to this institution that was terrible. And that's something I think people are overlooking with that. Like, her words were nice or whatever, but if it just serves to make fascism easier to swallow, then is it really that good? And is it really that Christ-like if it doesn't have any kind of prophetic witness against the things that they're saying? I don't think so.
It reminds me of something I was actually reading in Yurugu. The author kind of put forward this ethic of love for Christian empire as almost like a marketing ploy. Like we put forward this, I won't say we as in, I agree with this, but American evangelical Christianity, Christian nationalism puts forward the ethic of love, the ethic of forgiveness as a cover for what Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, J.D. Vance, the political imperialistic project that's actually behind it is given cover by the message of forgiveness and love. And that was like a perfect picture of that.
Exactly.
So when I go on Facebook and people are saying, well, look, Erica forgave the killer. Isn't this a beautiful thing?
Right.
Forgetting the entire context of the event in which she's saying this.
Yes.
And of course it's a horrible thing and we don't condone violence, and Charlie Kirk should have never been killed like that.
Right. Absolutely.
That's only one part of the structure that this thing happened within, right? Like if you're willing to get up in what I would consider to be a neo-Nazi type of rally and say, I forgive you, but don't say anything to your point about the insane rhetoric that Donald Trump says right after. If you don't get on the podcast, because she's on this podcast now,
right?
And you don't condemn what he said, I hate my enemies, I want the worst for them. That's what he said,
right?
And to me, it sounds like you're just giving cover to that.
It's exactly what I'm saying.
On your podcast,
100%.
And then say, I said I forgive the shooter, and what's happened afterwards, the vitriol, the going after people who are in political disagreement to the current administration, that is also not in line with the ethic of love that I stand for. If she doesn't do that, then ultimately I can't respect and I can't even take serious your desire to offer forgiveness to the shooter, honestly.
Yeah, there's this saying in Christianity that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, right? And that is because of like their faithful witness and their sacrifice that, the gospel message was able to explode. And I've seen a lot of them comparing Charlie's death and Erica's then, subsequent forgiveness of the shooter to martyrdom. And I've seen some reactions that are like, that's not martyred. He's not a martyr. I disagree. He is a martyr, but he's not a martyr for Christianity.
Sure.
He's a martyr for American fascism. He's a martyr for the violence that the American right wants to execute upon its political enemies, and for the domination that it wants to exhibit over not just its enemies but even its supporters. Because that's the ideology that isn't seeking the best for anybody, including its supporters. It
Absolutely
seeks
not.
to dominate and control. And I was listening to Chris Hedges, right? Love everything he does. He's he was like the New York Times bureau chief in where was it, over in I can't think of the place, in the Balkans, during the wars going on there. He was foreign war correspondent in El Salvador. He was in Gaza for a while. He's basically been like on the ground all over the place. Also has a master's of divinity. I think he's a Presbyterian minister even to this day. He's like one of the best journalists in the world. But he was on Crystal Kyle and Friends with Crystal Ball and Kyle Kalinske. And I heard him talk about by declaring him a martyr, he was saying that it's true for their movement, because what the martyr does is they sanctify the movement. And therefore any dialogue or negation is seen as a betrayal of the martyr, and that the martyr justifies the acts of revenge.
That's exactly what's happening right now.
Exactly. And so he says the martyr justifies the acts of revenge, including the violence in the name of what was done to the martyr, the sacrificial blood of the martyr. So in the wake of that one act of violence, that who knows what the real motivations, we don't know what that is yet. But like I said, in my opinion, it almost doesn't matter, because it's a solitary act. What matters is the violence that will be sanctified because of the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk. You can see it already in Trump declaring that anybody that goes by Antifa is going to be lumped into a terrorist group. So I guess that's everybody from Saving Private Ryan, right? Like everyone from the Band of Brothers series is now, right? Because I'm pretty sure they were all anti-fascists. All those World War II vets, right?
There you go.
Anti-fascists. So I guess we're all terrorists now. But then I don't know if did you see the National Security Directive he put out? Is like called NSPM 7.
Yes.
They're trying to do pre-crime, like straight up Minority Report, which has kind of been the U.S. model since 9/11. Is which is, by the way, I think it's a big mistake to lean into calling people terrorists.
I agree. It's become a slippery slope. The slipperiest of slopes, very fast in the past 9 months.
Real fast. And I remember watching Chapo Trap House, or listening to Chapo Trap House. Is a great leftist podcast. And after the events of January 6th, where all the liberal Democrats were very, and a lot of people on the left too, were very eager to jump on the bandwagon of saying these people are terrorists. Now, I don't condone what they did or whatever, but to call them terrorists, I think I hate the slippery slope argument, but you got to be really careful, because once we start labeling people terrorists, terrorism isn't even a real thing.
No,
terrorism,
it's a made-up idea.
I love Stanley Hauerwas, the Christian theologian, talked about 9/11. He's like, these people weren't terrorists, they were murderers. Call them what they are. When you call somebody a terrorist, that's just like a political designation that allows you to take away their rights.
Exactly.
Take away due process.
Exactly.
And now they're playing with talking about American citizens as terrorists on a wide scale. So this National Security Directive, bro, anybody that uses these phrases is considered, any entity or group is considered to be on the watch list for violent extremism, anti-capitalism, anti-Christianity, support for overthrow of the government of the United States, extremism on migration, whatever that means. Listen to these ones. Extremism on race, whatever that means.
What does that mean?
Extremism on gender, hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on the family, hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on religion, and hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on morality. So, I mean, basically anybody who doesn't submit to, by the way, those people have no idea what traditional Christian views on morality or anything like that are.
That's the part. So it's their definition.
They get to define it.
Whoever wouldn't have shown up to Charlie Kirk's memorial, you're on a terror watch list.
That's
now.
Exactly right. Anybody who doesn't submit to the standards of living that the state regime tells you have to submit to, you are now on a pre-watch as a violent extremist. Bro, it's a scary world to live in.
It is, and it reminds me, and we may get into Assata Shakur later on, but as I was reading her autobiography, it took me it took me back in time and to think about some of the designations that happened to a lot of the Black Panthers and the Black radical movement in the 60s and 70s, that once we determine that you're a terrorist or someone whose political ideology is a threat to the regime or to the government, there's nothing that the government won't do to you.
That's right.
And there's the legal substructure has now been set up, because back then it was illegal. What they did in the FBI, was exposed in COINTELPRO. So a lot of the tactics that they used back then were illegal. But now, because of the way that our system has adjusted since 9/11, a lot of those things are now codified. They're legal. Executive orders have been passed. And so those same tactics that were used against a lot of the Black community at that time are now, the threat is now for everyone who doesn't agree. And so, as we talk about, fascism, if we think about from the perspective of the Black community, this is not something that's necessarily new.
It's not new.
But now, and I was listening to Cornel West, who was making this comparison. He said back then, fascism is something that was targeted at Black radicals. Now, it's being targeted to everyone who doesn't agree with the regime. It doesn't matter what your race is. It also doesn't even matter, because the distinctions that are made here are not even about left-wing radicals. There's probably some Republicans that don't hold a traditional view.
There definitely are.
Yeah, so what are we talking about?
Yeah.
So literally anyone, and I think Chris Hedges wrote an article that says we are all Antifa now.
Right.
Because everyone...
Great article.
It doesn't matter what you believe. There's now, because of this executive order, no matter what you do, if you do something the administration doesn't like, they now have a reason to come after you and a justification for it. And this is what we've been seeing being built up from since the beginning of January this year. Is scary.
And bro, you see, like you said, Black communities have had to deal with this for a long time, and even greater levels of oppression, in slavery and in Jim Crow, moving on beyond that. But we've also seen the systematized attempt to practice what they want to do here now on foreign countries overseas.
That's right.
Because, basically, if you lived in a country the United States invaded, right, or had a strong enough military presence, you were subject to all the things we're scared about happening in America right now. It's like the chicken's coming home to roost. And there's a lot of liberals and a lot of Democrats who are very afraid of the direction our country is headed in, who lended their support to a lot of what we did overseas. And so much of it is implicit too, because people don't have to get up and say, I support this or that. But you go to a sporting event, and it's a part of our cultural liturgy. I think of the theologian and philosopher James K.A. Smith, who talked about, I think in his book, The Desiring the Kingdom, he talked about how our cultural events are liturgies that shape our loves and our desires. They're liturgies that literally define who and what we worship. And so when you go to even a sporting event, and you have airplanes, fighter jets flying over, the national anthem is being played, we're all standing up. It's all meant and designed to evoke this sense of reverence, kind of similar to how in a worship service, in a contemporary service, you got the fog machine going, you got the lights, you got the repetitive cadence, which, by the way, it gets shat on a lot, but by people who love more liturgical elements, and I'm more aligned that if I'm going to go to a church, probably going to be a little more liturgical. But what do you think like high church masses are, where they got the incense going and the whole building, everything is designed to evoke a sense of awe in you, to get you to submit yourself and to approach with a sort of reverence. And so as a whole country, we approach everything our military does with a sort of reverence, almost like the fear of God, the fear of you're afraid to even criticize it because,
Word to Colin Kaepernick.
Bro, exactly. Word to Colin Kaepernick. Exactly. And it's really amazing, though, because now we've all practiced and participated in that so much, in sanctifying the violence that we've committed on communities on a smaller scale here in the United States, communities on a broad scale around the world, and now it's coming for everybody.
It's challenging, and it's something that I'm trying to figure out how to deal with. So because for me, I'm still learning about some of the things that are happening in the moment, right? So
Same.
The idea that America is becoming a fascist regime, or is a fascist regime, I think there's a part of me that is still coming to terms with that fully. Because I think, after the first administration, I was like, man, this is pretty bad. but we survived, right? We're still here.
Yeah.
I mean, January 6th, we almost didn't make it, right? But then, Biden comes in, and I almost felt like I shouldn't have, but because that period of time, especially with COVID, was so emotionally, mentally, spiritually traumatizing and challenging and exhausting, I was like, man, I think I need to take a break from politics. Right?
Yeah.
And so Joe Biden comes in, and it was like you could almost, if you're of a certain persuasion, forget the project that America was on. It didn't stop with Joe Biden. Some of the messaging changed, especially if you look at what was going on with Israel and Palestine. But as Donald Trump was coming back again for his second election, I'm like, man, I really don't need this dude to win again.
Yeah.
But there's a part of me that's like, well, we survived it once. I really hope that it's not as bad as I think it could get.
Yeah.
But ever since the election and his inauguration, week upon week, day upon day, it's been confirmed.
Yeah.
And the little sliver of doubt in the back of my mind that would say it's not going to be as bad as I think it could is pretty much gone.
Yeah.
So I'm even having, I had a conversation with my therapist last night, and I'm trying to, explain some of this to him. And even on a personal level, like, it's given me some moments of like having an existential crisis where I'm like, shit, this is getting really bad.
Yeah.
And, we're in Chicago. And so Trump is even talking about, it's been confirmed even from the governor a couple of days ago that they are sending military to Chicago.
Military troops, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm looking on TikTok, and I'm seeing the FBI and ICE walking around patrolling. And
bro, our neighborhood.
In our neighborhood, like,
Yeah.
I go and walk around, and I'm like, I'm seeing on social media, I was just here.
Right.
And so it's coming close to home, and so I'm trying to figure out, like, what is it in this time? And I'm sure I'm not the only one that's trying to figure out, how do you stay grounded? How do you not get swept away in what's clearly a strategy? Steve Bannon called it, flooding the zone, and so it's kind of meant to overwhelm us. So how do we not be overwhelmed? And a couple things that I'm taking, and I took from the conversation last night, is one, remembering my values and staying plugged into community. Those are the two things that we kind of honed in on.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's helpful for someone else too.
That's
but
important.
The reality that I'm having to come back to is like, okay, in this moment, it's easy to get overwhelmed with the information that's happening, and that's intentional.
Yeah.
Right. But when I feel myself starting to get overwhelmed, what are the things that I value, and what are small bite-sized steps that I can take to lean into those values?
Bro.
Whether it's not just ingesting news, but like reflecting and writing.
Right.
I value things like activity and sports. So instead of being swept up into what's going on, I've got enough information. Let me lean into, going and play basketball, going on a run.
Yeah, you got to do something that actually gives you a hope for a future.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the challenge in this time for us, is like, man, I don't think I can, because I think part of me wants to like scroll and be like, man, if I know everything that's going on, maybe I'll have a sense of control in what feels like a very uncontrollable situation. But ultimately that project doesn't work, and so I'm trying to figure that out.
Bro, it makes me think of Dr. West, Cornel West. I think he calls it tragicomic hope, where he talks about like how the ethic comes from the blues, right, and from jazz, which teaches us how to sing in the face of oppression, and not in a way that just like ignores it and has like a blind optimism, but like in the blues, what are you singing about? The blues.
Yep.
But it can still make you feel something.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's, what happens is, I think for me, with what you're talking about, when I start scrolling too much, I know it's a problem, not because I'm being aware. We need to be aware of what's going on. But when I stop feeling, when I start to feel numb, when I start to feel hopeless, I need to switch something up. And one small thing for me, and I think exactly what you said, being in community. What was the other thing you said?
Leaning into values.
And what are your values? Yeah. Hyper important. A small practical thing is, I realize like I will just scroll and I'll see a video about something, and I'll scroll 2 or 3 more videos, and I'll be informed by that first video. Then I see another video informing me about the exact same thing.
Exactly.
And if I'm not careful, you could sit there, you could watch 10 different videos informing you about the thing you're already informed on.
Yep.
You don't need to do that.
Yep, you already got it.
Yeah, you don't need to do that. You need to move out of that, right? And what I've tried to do is, with my algorithm, instead of just letting it be totally dictated by scrolling, I think it also is impacted by what you search.
Yeah,
so when I notice my algorithm's getting too full of the same kind of thing, I start doing searches of the kind of things I want to put in my algorithm. Spend some time on that too.
Yeah, those are good tactics.
But bro, you're right. We got to get out and touch grass. You know what I mean? Like literally playing basketball. Yeah. Bro, I think about when I think about like Dr. West talking about tragicomic hope. The reason I brought that up is it makes me think of the witness of our brothers and sisters in the struggle in Palestine, bro. Like nobody other than the people in the Sudan and Congo right now, and there's a few other places we have tragic things happening around the world. And I'm sure if we had a better look at what was going on there, we would see similar things that I'm about to point out. Sure. Is they have a reason to despair.
Absolutely.
They've got reason to despair.
Much more than us.
And when they do fall into despair, I think it's perfectly understandable. But also so many times I'm seeing videos of the people there finding reasons to laugh, finding reasons to love. And I remember watching, there was a music teacher, I don't know if you saw this video, where there was like a quadcopter that had like this hum that was like rhythmic and was like outside their tent. And he used it to create a song that went along with it. And he had all these children there. He was their music teacher. I mean, they're surrounded by rubble and there's a music teacher teaching music. Yeah. Bro, that's beautiful. Yeah. And the children are harmonizing with the teacher around the rhythmic sound of this quadcopter that could gun them down at any moment. And I thought, like, dude, who are we to think like to give up? Absolutely. You know, I think it's so important to never lose revolutionary optimism, even in the face of tragedy. And I think it's like exactly what you talk about, getting out and playing basketball. Sometimes it can feel like, what am I doing? Like having fun when there's so much pain happening around the world. Well, just worry alone doesn't solve that. No. We have to create a world of love. That's why I love Bell Hooks. And I'm meeting you were talking about Bell Hooks' book. Yep. Talks about not abandoning, as the left has, love as a political project. What does that mean to you? Like for you, when you think about love being a political project, how do you think we should, like, what should that mean for us?
That's a good question. And it's something that I've come back to often, because in a season where things feel so threatening, it's easy to kind of turn inward and be defensive and have the parts of you that are trying to protect yourself be the thing that becomes prominent. And so for me, I'm trying to figure out how to step away and, like, you know, give those parts of myself that feel threatened, like give them the care that they need, but also realizing that everyone around me is worthy of dignity, respect, care, and ultimately, if we're going to get through this, we're going to get through it together. Yeah. And so what does it look like to open myself up to new connection, to care, to even just simple things, right? Like, you know, I'm on a train and somebody's going through, you know, having what seems to be a challenging moment, right? Like, instead of just being focused on whatever I'm scrolling on, just being attentive to people. So I think it's a matter of, like, moment by moment, opening myself up to the experience of others and allowing that to affect me, and open myself up to connection and nurturing those things that aren't just like I said at the beginning, you know, there's protectors that want to make sure that you're okay. And I think those things are good, but opening yourself up to connection to others, care for others, community, and mutual giving and taking. I think it's challenging in these moments, and I have to continue to find, like, the practical things or the small steps to do that, but continue to shift my orientation away from just like, shit is hitting the fan, what do I do to protect myself? Yeah. And to realizing that ultimately together, this is how we manage a moment like this.
Dude, I think it's so hard. Like, it's literally not an easy thing to do. Yeah. We're thinking about love. And I think you're right, man. Like, just being attentive sometimes to what's going on around us. Yep. Not viewing people as problems to, like, overcome, but as, like, persons, right? Like, as actual people need to love. Doesn't mean you can always do something, but treating people with, like, a level of dignity and respect. For me, I really struggle, especially we started off talking about Charlie Kirk. I really struggle with what it means for love to be a political project in the context of, like, showing compassion and love for our enemies. And the topic of forgiveness, and I tried to pull it up, I couldn't find exactly the right thing, but, you know, Bell Hooks does talk a lot about this and all about love. And that's all here. She says, for me, forgiveness and compassion are always linked. How do we hold people accountable for wrongdoing, and yet at the same time remain in touch with their humanity enough to believe in their capacity to be transformed? Absolutely. And, you know, it's like, for me, I wonder, do I live in a world where people are fixed, or do I live in a world where anybody can change? Like, I like to imagine in a different scenario, obviously, if he had been raised different, Charlie Kirk could have been a very different person, right? I look, but therefore, but the grace of God go I, so to speak. You know what I mean? Yeah. Honestly, if I didn't go to a state, if I went to a state college, like a state university, if I went anywhere pretty much other than Oral Roberts University, which is like a hyper right-wing, hyper charismatic religious Pentecostal Christian university, I today would be MAGA. I would be probably an aspiring televangelist. I'll be probably, aspiring still because don't quite have the skills to get there, but that's what I want. That's what I want to do, right? Maybe a few years I'd break in, I'd have my moment. And but because I went into an environment in a Christian university where I had professors who challenged me earlier, you talk about Wayne Grudem, dude, he would have never, his systematic theology text would have never been used in the school I went to, even though it was like from that world. I just somehow got lucky, because even now a lot of those professors are gone. Some of them are still there, but now there's people there who would definitely use Wayne Grudem. Like if I hadn't gone to that university at the specific time with the specific influences that I had, where I was open to what they said because they weren't my enemy. Like I lived my whole life being ready to like debunk some atheist teacher on evolution, and when I got to college, like I was training for that for like the time I was 5, and then I went to a Christian university, and all my Christian professors believed in evolution.
Oh, so you were like, oh, this is not what I expected.
Yeah, bro. I was like, wait, Christians can believe in evolution? This is crazy.
Did you debate them?
No, because they would like start off with like, they would start off the class with like a prayer and like reading like a small devotional. And so it was harder because like you're ready to attack somebody who's like attacking your faith. You have somebody promoting your faith, they just don't deny the facts. But because of that, I was able to go through a radical sort of transformation. I remember there was a class called Christian Worldview where the professor pretended to be, he was a Christian professor, but he pretended to be an atheist for the whole semester.
The whole semester?
Until the last 2 weeks.
You have to really understand.
You got to really know what you're talking about.
To do that.
So he pretended to be an atheist, and the whole class, he would just attack Christianity, and students would argue with him. He would just dismantle your arguments. Then he would get to the end, and he would give you like the arguments to rebuild your faith, which I didn't find convincing. Why one of the reasons I didn't rebuild my faith. I was like, oh, this is good. I don't think the new president there lets them do that class anymore, though. So like if I hadn't been a part of that, I could have been Charlie Kirk. So if that's true, could there be a world in which Charlie Kirk could have changed? I think a lot of people would say no, but I really want to resist that.
And I think the thing that I've thought about as well, because people are consistently on that side of things, saying, think about the wife, think about the kids. I do think about his children.
Yes.
And I think about a world where in 30 years, his children grow up and they're his age.
Bro.
And they look back on what happened. And my hope is that they would see it's hard, right? Because this is a traumatic thing. But my hope is that they would see that what their father was doing was not good politics, as Ezra Klein called it. But what he was doing was actually antithetical to the spirit of, the good in America, which is creating a space that's open and willing to accept people from across political, ideological, racial backgrounds. Like that's not the project that they want to be a part of. So I do believe that in order for us to have that ethic of love, we have to think about people that we may not agree with now.
I agree.
And see them as having an opportunity to join us in the project that we're trying to build. And and similar to you, like I could never have seen myself be a MAG, but I have a confession that I don't tell a lot of people. There was a period of time when I was in high school that I was listening to Alex Jones. And Alex Jones back then is very different than Alex Jones now. I think Alex Jones from 2012.
He was hating on the Bushes.
He was hating on the Bushes. He was hating on Obama, so I couldn't really get with him there. But a lot of the things that this is a side tangent, but sometimes I rack my head, I'm like, what is Alex Jones doing now? Because things like troops in the streets, he would go crazy. He would be out protesting when there would be the G7 whatever summits, and there would be the militarization of police in the streets. He was so anti that. How is he now in alignment with Trump? That's neither here nor there. But I say all that to say, kind of the ethos of this podcast is ask the next question. And it's about transformation, and it's about learning. It's about being willing to challenge your presuppositions, being willing to challenge the belief system that you have, to grow, right? And to change. And like ultimately, if you believe that that's possible for anyone, then I do think that there's a seed there for the ethic of love that you're kind of talking about.
And I think, bro, the ethic of love, like what does it look like to love our enemies? It cannot involve the refusal to tell the truth.
Absolutely not.
Like Dr. West talks about this a lot, Cornel West. that like love is truth telling.
Yeah.
And so like I couldn't love Charlie Kirk as my enemy if I refuse to tell the truth about Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
I can't love his children if I refuse to tell the truth. Lying about him, pretending that he had some kind of, great or even, indifferent legacy. He was just a debater. The man was not a debater. The man was a propagandist who would get up on stage in front of 17-year-olds, debate them and lie to them and gaslight them as tools of like winning a debate. That's why anytime the man got in front of anybody that really that could really debate, he got spanked.
Absolutely.
Did you see the one with the comedian, bro, with the fetus picture?
Oh, we brought up the what was it? A whale?
A dolphin.
A dolphin.
He's like, so you think he holds up a picture of like a human fetus? He's like, it has a tail. You think this is a human? He's like, yes, it's a human. He goes, 100%. Charlie's like, 100%. He goes, it's a dolphin fetus. Best like.
And I mean, ultimately, that was using his own tactics because he's a gotcha debater.
That's right.
And so if you're going to use gotcha tactics against these students, I'm going to use a gotcha tactic to kind of expose the grift of what you're doing.
Bro, because I remember after George Floyd died, he came out with a Facebook post that was a lie, where he said that the medical examiner said that he didn't die from a knee on his neck. He died from an overdose of drugs. Well, that medical examiner came out and said that's not true. I didn't say that his death is consistent with asphyxiation from a knee being on his neck. And what they did was they actually went back and they edited that Facebook post and they put a note at the bottom doing a retraction.
Did they? Okay.
They did.
Because I heard him continue to say, he may not have said it. Okay.
Bro, but he continued in speeches for years after, even up until like his death, he was still saying that the medical examiner said that. See, he didn't care about the truth. Maybe for legal purposes, they put that there so they could point back to it if they got sued or something like that. But in many debates thereafter, something that he already admitted was a lie, he continued to state as a true thing. And so if we want to love Charlie, if we want to love his wife and love his kids, we have to tell the truth. And also, bro, you talk about thinking about the kids in the future. That was an angle I hadn't even considered. That's impactful to me. But I also think about his kids now with their dad just being publicly executed. And their mom is like out on tour campaigning for Donald Trump, recording podcasts, doing all this stuff. They got color commentary, people with headphones in between the speakers doing, turn it into a campaign rally, selling merch. Bro, none of those. What's tragic for them is none of those people even love that man. No, he was used and abused and tossed out. And I think that's interesting to me because I think Charlie's death is a metaphor for the entirety of the MAGA base. And ask the next question, right? Does it end there? No, I think it's a metaphor for the entirety of the American voting populace who believes that the end all be all is in voting for a candidate that's going to get them where they want to go. At the end of the day, you're going to be betrayed, you're going to be used, you're going to be abused and tossed out because they really don't care about you.
It's a mask off moment, I think, for a lot of people. And I mean, the approval rating I know is rather low. I think some people will never wake up to it. But as things, of course, fingers crossed, they don't continue to deteriorate. But economically speaking, if they do continue to deteriorate, I think it's becoming clear now that he doesn't have another election to win. He doesn't even care, and the people around him don't even care to pretend to be going to be doing things to help their constituents or their supporters. It's very clearly about vengeance. It's about making sure that, the people that have, allegedly avenged you, we are avenging them on your behalf.
Right.
It's not even about helping you in your material conditions, the tariffs and things. He's enriching himself. He's enriching his friends. These are things that we all know. But what about what's happening now is even going to be helpful for the people that voted for him?
Nothing. Yeah, because it's not for them.
Yeah.
It's not for them.
It's mask off.
And I think you have multiple things happening. I think Trump is really not an ideologue.
No.
I think it's truly just self-motivated, is trying to get him and a few other people that will be loyal to him rich. I do think he wants to stay in power. I do think that he is motivated ideologically by racism and sexism and all of that. But I think there is a bigger ideological movement that's using him behind the scenes, with J.D. Vance kind of at the tip of the spear, but not really the power base of the spear. I think you got a lot of people in what to call the NRX, the neo-reactionary movement, that are literally against democracy. Right? Like Peter Thiel literally said that America has to get over its, or is that
was Curtis Yarvin.
Curtis Yarvin. America has to get over its dictator phobia. And Peter Thiel said that democracy is an outdated operating software and that we have to move beyond it.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think actually that it even matters that the approval rating is so low. One of the things Chris Hedges said on that podcast episode with Chris on Kyle and Friends is he traced through some of the history of how unimportant support is for the party, the fascist party that destroys the country. He said the Nazi party regime only ever had like 30-something% approval at its height. But it really doesn't matter because what they do is they erode all of the systems that create checks and balances. If you take anybody out of the military that is going to oppose you, and you just put people in there who can do whatever you want. Like they just had that big meeting where they brought all the generals and top military officials from the U.S. military from around the world just this week. And Trump basically said at the beginning of the meeting, like, if you're not on board with anything in here, then get out. And he said, consider it the end of your career and the end of your future. And so, then they went on to, talk about how they're going to continue to work to reshape the military toward just being ideologically aligned with fascism. But, at the end of the day too, bro, when I think about like what you said earlier is so important about not living and existing in a reactionary space to everything that's happening, but remembering what are your core values and staying connected to community, because our community is not the nation, the United States of America. And our core values are not necessarily even ever have really been represented by the United States. They've had moments where some of them align.
For sure.
But, the world is a much bigger place and history is a much bigger place than the last 200 years of history here in the United States. And so regardless of what happens, I think it's important to not lose revolutionary optimism and to not lose hope for the future.
Yeah, no, that's good. I want to talk a little bit, to change lanes a little bit, about, did you see what happened with Napheesa Collier yesterday?
Yes, bro.
Yeah, so.
Her statement?
Yeah, if you're not aware, Napheesa Collier is one of the stars within the WNBA. And the season's kind of coming to an end, right? And so she was just eliminated in the playoffs. She was hurt on one of the final plays. She plays for the Minnesota Lynx. They were playing against, I think it's the Phoenix Mercury. And she was injured. Her coach kind of had an explosion against the referees. She was ejected. Her coach made a statement afterwards lambasting the referees. And Napheesa, who was actually the head of the Players Association, who are in communication and contract negotiations with leadership and the commissioner around kind of the future of the league.
I didn't realize she was the head of the Players Association.
She's the head of the Players Association as well. So she, in her exit interview, so they do this after every season, most leagues do exit interviews where it's kind of a press conference where the player kind of reflects on the season, they ask them questions, things of that nature. Napheesa very directly read a statement at the beginning of her time criticizing very directly the commissioner of the WNBA in a way I've never seen. I've never seen an athlete directly oppose by name the commissioner.
Wow.
She said, she even quoted her, right? She said, I've had conversations with the commissioner, I forget her name, Kathy, what's the last name? Engelbert?
Yeah, Engelbert.
Engelbert, yeah. Kathy Engelbert is the commissioner. So she reflected on conversations that she had with Kathy, and she brought up the officiating in one of her conversations with the commissioner and said, what are you going to do about some of the officiating deficiencies that the league has had? And she's not been the only one to complain. This has been a complaint for years.
Yeah.
And the commissioner said, well, only losers complain about the officiating. She also brought up...
Dude, that's bad leadership, bro.
I mean, that's one of the things she said.
Yeah.
She said we have the best coaching in the world, or not the best coaching, best players in the world, the best fans in the world, but she said we have the worst leadership in the world.
Dang.
So she took a direct line of attack on the commissioner. I actually heard today that there's rumors that the commissioner is actually going to step down, which is incredible. I don't know if this is true or not.
Are you serious?
But yeah, there's reporting that it's looking like the commissioner is actually.
Yo, Collier's goated, dude.
She hit it with the Kendrick Lamar Meet the Grams moment.
Yeah.
But I think what's going on in the WNBA in general is really interesting.
It is.
It's kind of in comparison to the NBA, right? Like it's kind of a startup. They're adding new teams. I think Cleveland and Detroit are going to be getting new teams next year.
Yeah. But they're trying to act like a corporation that's got everything figured out.
Yeah, yeah. And so the players are like, hey, we're growing exponentially as a league, but our salaries are not reflecting that. And even in the negotiations that are coming for the next CBA, they're not going to be reflective of the growth that the league is facing. So for instance, like Caitlin Clark, she's one of the most famous players in the WNBA. She's driving revenue, I think, in a way that no one ever has in the WNBA. She's making less money than I'm making.
She's making like less than 80K, right?
She's making like, less than 80K of her annual salary, right? So she hasn't necessarily spoken up as much herself, but Napheesa was going to bat for her and asked the commissioner, hey, what are you going to do to ensure that some of these players who are driving revenue to the league are going to be compensated fairly, because it's clearly not fair in this moment. And what did Kathy say? She said, the players should be on their knees thanking me for the TV rights deals that we had. Caitlin Clark should thank me that she has a platform to make all the money that she makes off the court.
Bro, what do these people think? Bro, that is like the brain disease of capitalism, bro. People literally think that the most important in an organization is the CEO, the head of the organization.
Absolutely.
Like, she thinks she brings more value than Angel Reese or Caitlin Clark to that organization. Yo, you are replaceable.
Absolutely.
These athletes are not replaceable. The workers are not
Especially
replaceable.
Not now.
Yeah. Bro, I read this as just like a classic, worker versus capital situation.
Yeah.
This is like, you could read Marx all over that situation. And I saw something about Napheesa's husband. Mm-hmm. He runs another league, like a league that runs in the off season. That's 3-on-3.
Yep.
Bro, I read that league is a minimum salary of $100,000 a year.
Yep.
So they play in the off season, make $100,000 to play in a 3-on-3 league. That's probably less physically demanding, and they make more money than they make in the NBA. That, like, if I'm a shareholder in the WNBA, are they public? Like, who owns this?
I think it's all private owners.
Bro, if I'm a team owner, I'm calling on Engelbert to resign too.
Absolutely.
Because she's about to risk us losing all of our talent.
Absolutely.
No one's gonna watch. That's just bad leadership, bro.
Absolutely.
She needs to read some Jocko Willenick up in here or something. You know what I mean? Some extreme leadership, extreme ownership.
I think that, to your point, so not only does her husband help run the league, she does herself.
Oh,
her
interesting.
And Breanna Stewart, they founded it, I think it was in 2022. The last season just passed this past January. And so this coming January, there'll be year 2 of Unrivaled. So they do 3-on-3, they do full court. So it is demanding. They play 3-on-3 full court, which is a lot. They do like one-on-one tournaments. I think the winner of the one-on-one tournament gets $250,000. And so historically what a lot of these players have done, because they're not making money in the off season and their in season salary is not necessarily up to snuff, they'll go and play overseas. So like Brittany Griner, she was over in Russia playing, and because she needed the bread, and maybe she didn't need it, but she just wanted to get paid more because
she probably did need it.
She's making probably what, $70,000.
Yeah, but you're living like the life of a famous person, so you can't just be out in the wild all the time.
Exactly.
That's honestly that puts their lives in danger, in my opinion.
She was over there and got detained, and she couldn't come back for a while.
Yeah, I know.
So because of the way the WNBA is structured, she was literally held in another country for an extended period of time.
But I mean, even here in the United States, imagine being like basically famous, but then being forced to live in like a low-income apartment because you can't survive.
Yeah, especially in a major city. Like you're in Chicago, you're in New York.
Because at that salary,
LA.
she's paying an agent.
Yep.
She's paying all kinds of stuff. Bro, I'm pretty sure Ice Cube's league, like the big 3 men's basketball league, they get paid less than that women's league.
I think you're right.
I think they make like up to like $100K, and the starting K in the women's 3 league is minimum at $100K.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because that kind of shows like the trajectory that women's sports have right now. I think also, since it was like a big thing with the U.S. women's soccer team a few years back, I felt like the public sentiment has shifted quite a lot since then. Because I feel like back then, everybody was like against the players. Like a lot of people, like, y'all make enough, you're not bringing in enough money to the league. And I think I see like a very different sentiment out there the majority of the time now.
Yeah, I think you're right. And even back to, I think it was 2011, the last time the NBA was on a lockdown because the players and the owners couldn't come to an agreement. Everybody's pissed. Yo, these greedy players, they want to get more money.
Yeah.
Why I can't watch my basketball? They need to stop being greedy. But like, if you think about it, most of us who are watching the NBA are in a similar position as the players are in comparison to the companies that we work for. We don't get
That's exactly right.
We don't have much say in how our work lives run. Right. If you're in a startup, you may have a little bit more, kind of like some of the NBA players have, but the general American is much more within the context of a worker, of a player, But for whatever reason, because of the system that we live in our indoctrination, it's a very clear example of us taking the side of the capitalist.
Yeah, 100%.
When we are not the people with the capital, bro, in our own lives. That doesn't make any sense.
It's bootlicker disease, bro. Everyone's out here just like kissing the feet of the masters.
Yeah, and I mean, I did it too, and it's like, where did this come from? Like,
bro.
We've been indoctrinated.
Yeah, it's institutionalized.
Yeah,
we're institutionalized into a system that teaches us not only to submit to oppression and subjugation, but to be thankful for it.
To be thankful for it, to celebrate it.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what we were talking about earlier about like you put a human face on something that's really sinister.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, one of the places we see that most clearly is not even with the Republicans, but with the Democrats. Sure. Like with MAGA and Trump, yeah, they might do some of that, like play some nice worship music, make it sound nice, play some Erica Kirk, but they come out still and say the thing that they wanted. Like Miller still gets up, Benny Johnson, Trump still gets up and says, "I hate my enemies." Yep. Whereas, like, bro, the Democrats, we can't forget, like, they are capitalists as well. Yeah. And like, if the Republicans went away and we were just led under a Democratic regime, people would still live a life subjugated to capital. Yeah. Very much so. And I remember, I think it's Slavoj Žižek that talks about, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but he talks about like the difference between a father that says, "We're going to visit your grandmother whether you like it or not." And that's like the Republican form of fascism. And the Democratic form of fascism is almost more sinister because that's like the father who says, "We're going to visit your grandmother. She loves you very much. You need to be happy about going to see her." Yeah. Because it's implicit there. You still don't have a choice. Yeah. But not only, do you not have a choice and you can like it or not, you don't have a choice and you have to like it.
You have to feel good about it.
You have to feel good about it. Yeah, you have to feel great about it. It's like, I have this thing with Barack Obama because
about Obama as well.
How it's so hard to dislike the guy.
Almost impossible.
So charismatic. Yeah. All I want to do is hang out with him and be around him.
Great speaker, inspiring.
Yes. Yeah. Seems like a great father. Yep. Seems like a great husband.
Who would want to hang out with Obama?
Seems like somebody you could trust at a personal level. Yep. Yet when he's the head of the institution, he's increasing the drone program that bombs children all around the world. Yeah. He oversaw a global system of hegemony that oppressed people around the world.
It's so hard, man. As a person that was 12 years old when Obama got elected, I had an Obama shirt on. It was such a cultural moment in recent years to have to go back on that time and be like, damn, like, actually, I don't think I still like the symbolism of what Obama meant, but when we get down to it, it's the same shit.
It's the same shit, bro.
It's hard to stomach that, man.
Yeah, same for me. Like, I got to college at 17 years old in 2007, and I was a staunch Republican. Okay. By the time Obama won, I was a Democrat. And I remember being in this place called the Fishbowl. Everybody at ORU was devastated, except for the black community. Yeah. Was like excited. Yeah. And so I was like in this place that we called the Fishbowl, and it was just like me, dude, I had literally had people like crying, like white people at ORU crying and telling me off, like, how could you support this? Like this is terrible. And then I went and I was like celebrating with all of my black friends at ORU. But I had this like, so for him, Obama to me, like in a personal way, represented like when I first started to really change and at the beginning of my awakening, I identified so much with them as millennials, all of us do. Yeah. Yeah. Like you talking, being 12 years old and being at home, seeing that happen is so meaningful. And I remember for me, Dr. West keeps coming up. He'll probably come up in every episode because Cornel West is my goat. Yeah. Probably not just because he's got good opinions on policy, but because I think nobody demonstrates what it looks like in a public space to do love as a political project like him. Yeah. But I remember him on a panel leading up to Obama's second inauguration. Mm-hmm. And it was like a big panel. Like Newt Gingrich was on this panel, Cornel West. There was a lot of people. It was on PBS. Okay. And I remember...
Rest in peace, PBS.
Yeah, rest in peace. And I remember, because we won't get this kind of stuff anymore. No. But Obama was choosing to swear in he chose Martin Luther King's Bible. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember Dr. West, he said some things that as a white person I just can't repeat. But one of the things he said is like, I'm not going to stand by. And this was somebody who campaigned for Barack Obama, who loves Barack Obama, who Barack Obama quoted and looked up to. He said, I'm not going to stand by and watch like the leader of this empire of militarization and capitalism and exploitation, all these things that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was actually a staunch opposer of, to stand up there and use his Bible and quench his prophetic fire, to use the Bible of a man who opposed all of the things that Obama took office and then proceeded to stand for, to use the Bible of a man like that as a symbol to signify that he somehow stands in line with the black prophetic tradition in America, when he didn't at all. To me, that was a radical moment watching Dr. West do that. That was like one of the first radicalizing moments where I realized something's not right, even about the liberal side of this.
Administration, I was so blind. So the fact that you could see that back then, I mean, you're a little bit older than me, but that is a moment that I don't think he was before his time. I don't think a lot of us, I mean, myself included, didn't really start waking up until after 2016.
Yeah. We were thoroughly propagandized.
Yeah. And again, who wouldn't be, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have the most charismatic, politically talented figure in our lifetime by far, and still to this day, no one can touch him politically. No one can touch him rhetorically as far as a rhetorician is concerned. I mean, you have to go back and look at like a Dr. King. I'm sure people are going to come in the comments and tell me other people that are really good speakers. But Obama was so prolifically talented that if he ran for president again, he'd probably win.
Yeah.
So at that period of time, it's like, I feel great.
Totally.
And there's nothing that you could tell me. But again, once we get to the Trump, you're like, wait a minute, I got to go back and think about how we got here.
Well, and they were giving us throughout that time all of this red meat, which, you know, like social concessions that we were winning, which were great. You know, gay marriage, like the world was becoming more progressively social liberal. These are important things. But what's sad is they were giving them to us as almost like a sleight of hand, right? Like, here's this. Don't look at what we're doing over here. And you know, I wasn't fully awakened to it. It was just like a moment, moment of consciousness where it's like there's like a thorn in my side now about this. But I mean, even when Hillary ran, you know, I had my best friends and I had a hashtag I'm with her text group. You know what I mean? Even though we supported Bernie in the pre-run, we supported her all the way through. And at the end of the day, I probably would still vote for Hillary. I still voted for Kamala, but it just got me to the point where I realized, like, we can't mistake and understand what these people are. They get my vote, but not necessarily my support. Because if it's them versus Trump, you know, I think it's harm reduction at that point. But if Kamala had been in office today, I don't think she would have done anything to stop the genocide in Gaza.
You're probably right.
And I know she came out in her book and she kind of alluded to, I would have done some things differently. Then say it then. Why didn't you say it then? Oh, they were muzzling my speech. You were in front of the microphone every day. Have some agency and be a real human person. Don't talk about what other people were stopping you from doing. You're not going to stop me from saying what I think is right to say. And once somebody is able to do that to a politician, in my opinion, then that politician isn't credible anymore.
And it reminds me, a lot of people have been talking about a conversation that happened recently between Ezra Klein and Ta-Nehisi Coates. And that impulse is what Ezra Klein was leaning into. And it's very clearly what Kamala tried to do. And it's very strange to me because Ezra Klein was trying to determine how do we move forward, since he was saying we a lot. And I don't know, not everybody who's watching his podcast is a Democrat, but he's using we to say Democrats. How did Democrats lose the election? And his idea of what to do, some of it was figure out what it takes to win and do that. And that's exactly what Kamala was trying to do. I may have certain principles behind the scenes, but I need to put forward something else publicly in order to win. And so it's very strange that, like, he was saying, like, we need to figure out what to do, move forward, because whatever we did didn't work. But the thing that he was putting forward was that we need to figure out how to compromise with people that who have lines, who don't have any lines. Like, they will say whatever, they'll do whatever. They're the Charlie Kirks. How do we build some sort of bridge between us? When Ta-Nehisi's perspective was, I don't know, I'm just going to tell the truth. I don't necessarily know how to build a bridge with people who...
he's like, that's not my job.
That's not my job. And I think what Ezra missed, and a lot of people online in the commentary around that conversation were saying, is that the politicians actually need to do what Ta-Nehisi Coates is saying. Let compromise be damned. What are your principles? What do you believe in? Stand on it, and people will stand behind you.
Bro, and there's a model for this working. In Trump.
That's exactly right.
He got up, he was like, I'm going to show you exactly how vile I am, how wretched I am, how evil my policies are going to be. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do to your face. And I'm going to tell you, I could probably shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and still get your support. And guess what? The base is still going to support who they're going to support. Yep. But he animated something within that small, because there's only ever a small sliver of people that really matter in an election. Yep. And he animated something. And I think you're right, bro. And I think Ta-Nehisi is right. Get up there and tell the truth about the goodness that you believe. But you know what? At the end of the day, I just don't believe it, bro. I don't believe the politician that says, well, I really hold these things privately, personally. Yep. You might vaguely have a sense that you know those things are right, but you don't really have any sort of conviction. Yeah. And what we need is somebody who can get up, I think, and has the conviction to do what's right. But in the meantime, bro, at the end of the day, there's so many, even if that person gets into office, there's so many forces at work in power that are going to be working against them. It really has to be a people's movement.
That's right.
The people can't put their faith in a politician. Right. We got to put our faith in grassroots organizing and labor unionizing, tenant unionizing, fighting. You know, I have some friends in Nashville who are working so hard to even do small things like Nashville, you know, they took a bunch of benches out that because homeless people have been sleeping on them, like at bus stops, or they just never had them, or they put up the benches that have like these dividers to where you can't lay on them, you know. Sure. And they have this project. They all got together like 2 weekends ago, and they just built a bunch of benches, and they started just taking them around the city and installing them at bus stops and other places where amazing. People need to be able to sit. Yeah. It's amazing. And that might sound small, but bro, I think that has a bigger impact and is actually more important than even, you know, a single person going out to cast their vote. Yeah,
no, I think that's real. And someone who I take inspiration from, and I'm going to continue to take inspiration from going forward, is Assata Shakur. She just recently passed, so rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace to that queen, man.
Yes, absolutely. I also see that one of the microphones is dead. I don't know which one it is.
Uh-oh.
But we'll find out whenever we edit.
We might be able to, the other one might pick it up and we might be able to raise it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Mine is still going.
Okay, so it must be
Is yours still green?
Nope, it's red.
Okay.
But we'll see what happens. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, so I actually started reading her autobiography at the beginning of last week. Yeah. And then, you know, saw news that she had passed. And so definitely wanted to continue to read it. And I couldn't put it down. It was such an inspiring book. I think about when I read Malcolm X's autobiography about 10 years ago. Yeah. And the impact that had on me at the time. This book is having a similar impact on me as I think about it. It's not necessarily the ideology that she landed in and being a black radical, which is of course a beautiful ideology that I, you know, have a lot of agreements with. It was the spirit in which she lived. In a time where she was in her movement, her people, obviously black people, were being oppressed. She refused to participate in her oppression. And she used her spirit was so fierce and ferocious in not being oppressed, right? So I think of a couple of examples that she gave in the book. So she was being framed for a burglary, a bank robbery. And the FBI had put up signs across the community saying, you know, find this woman. And it wasn't her, but they wanted to frame her. So they wanted to take her picture. She was already in custody. They wanted to take her picture and make another poster to basically frame her and say, you know, this is Assata Shakur. She's the one who did this. So they were in court wanting to take the picture of her. Yeah. She said, you're not taking my picture. They physically restrained her. She fought them, and they were beating her up, obviously, but she resisted so much that the picture that came up after it, you know, as they forced her to take a picture, didn't work because her face was so sunk in. Her demeanor it was so obvious that she had been beaten that they could not use the picture to frame her. She was in jail while she was pregnant. Yep. And reading through the story of how
bro, they had her shackled to the bed
to have a child. Yes. She had to fight for her life just to have her child. They literally were trying to stop her from conceiving this child. They wanted her to have an abortion in jail. Man. And she refused. So just the level of the passion that she had, the love that she had, and even, you know, moments where, you know, her spirit could have been crushed, and she went to things like writing poetry. There was a man that was kind of being convicted with her for one of the crimes that she was framed for. I think it was another bank robbery, who, while he was in prison, committed suicide. And of course this broke her spirit, and she, you know, wrote a poem as she did, commemorating his life. So just things that she did to keep hope alive, to keep herself going. But the level of passion, the willingness that she had to ask the next question, to not just take what she was given at face value.
Yeah.
She even, had some run-ins with some white socialists, and she said, I learned a lot from them, but the level of arrogance and the way that they spoke, it led me to believe that I actually couldn't be in community with them.
That's
so
right.
She was always willing to question, to critique.
She was so nuanced.
She was nuanced.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Have you read her?
I haven't read the biography, but I've been very familiar with her.
Yeah.
From a young age, because I've always been very influenced by the Black Panther movement, especially Fred Hampton and Assata, and growing up as a hip hop fan, right?
Yep.
She was Tupac's godmother, an aunt by marriage, right?
She mentions Afeni in the book.
Yeah. And Tupac referenced her a number of times as well, and a lot of other rap music has referenced Assata. But she, she taught me a lot as a white socialist about because she also was very critical of basing political critique purely on the basis of race. And ignoring class, which the Black Panthers got right consistently. Yeah. You look at Fred Hampton's Rainbow Coalition. But also, yes, looking at then the pure class reductionism that happens and not understanding that, hey, revolutionary Marxism, revolutionary socialism has to arrive out of the lived experience of the people that are being oppressed and not out of an ivory tower of academia.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, we have so much to learn from her, and it's really so sad to see her pass away. But bro, like, what a legend, bro. Like, I remember reading about her when she was broken out of prison.
Yep.
Bro, crazy.
She said she didn't get into, I think very intentionally, didn't get into the details of what happened there. But I did know she broke out, but do you have more details?
A little bit, because for a while, you see that she escaped from prison, which is like crazy. So you imagine like Shawshank Redemption, no, bro. What was it called? The Black Liberation Army, I think?
Yep.
They broke her out. They showed up with weapons.
I didn't know that.
They snuck weapons into the prison. They overpowered the guards. They unlocked the doors.
That's crazy.
And Assata Shakur walks out of the front gate right into a van that was waiting for her.
Wow.
Bro,
that's some
when is
shit.
the Assata movie coming?
Right. They're not going to let that one come out.
No, because she was she's the only, I think it was just in 2011 or 2013, during the Obama administration.
Which is crazy.
That she was put a $2 million reward on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list.
Which is
the only black woman ever have a reward that high, because she spent out the rest of her life in Cuba under political asylum. But I just think, dude, too, what a failure it is, even of the left media, to not continuously try to use voices like hers.
Sure.
While they were still alive. Because honestly, bro, I didn't know that she, when she died, it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, she was alive? I didn't think she had died. I'm not talking about some Mandela effect stuff. But I don't know. You think wow, these legends are still alive and we're not listening to them. We're so drowned out by so much noise.
Absolutely.
One of the things I hope we can do in this podcast is point people towards voices like hers.
Absolutely.
Because, there's so much out there that people really need to be connected with that they're just not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it wasn't for a lot of the things that I read, and I think back into my time as I was trying to navigate my way in evangelical spaces as a black Christian who had some sense of race consciousness, right? I was trying to make my way. I think about some of the elders and the leaders who handed me books and said, hey, maybe you should learn about this figure. Maybe you should learn about what happened in South Africa. Maybe you should learn about James Cone. And some of the elders that I had the privilege of being around who pointed me to some people who I didn't necessarily know about because of my miseducation. They helped me develop a different level of consciousness and understanding that I think a lot of people don't get if you just go to school and you read the typical books and you don't do your own education.
Yeah.
Right. And so
that's amazing, bro, that you had that just naturally in your life. I had to go $180,000 into debt to get that.